Hi, I'm Dan Hoffman. Welcome to Farm Connections. On today's show, we visit the Faribault Woolen Mill in Faribault, Minnesota. The mill recently celebrated its 150th anniversary. We go inside to learn how they turn a raw agricultural product, wool, into beautiful finished goods. Kent Theisse explains what sequestration may mean to ag programs. Amber Hanson tells us about the good work she's doing to communicate farm issues to our elected leaders. And Haley Hinrichs talks about her ag career goals. Stay with us. Farm Connections is next.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Brought to you in part by Absolute Energy, a locally owned facility producing 115 million gallons of ethanol every year, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood.
Adding value to farm products enhances the economic benefit to our rural communities. And Faribault Woolen Mills has been adding value to wool for 150 years. Let's learn more about this fascinating process.
Well, the first time I came down to visit the mill was in March 8th of 2011. And I recall the day I came down, it was a cold day, and I was told that in the fall of 2010 there'd been a flood on the river here, a 500-year flood, and it had left about 10 feet of water in the lower level. And we go down into this very dirty, messy, smelly basement, and that's my introduction. My name is Paul Moody, and in 2011 my cousin Chuck Moody and I and our families purchased the woolen mill after it had been closed for a couple of years, and began the process of reviving this old mill. I honestly felt at that time, I thought I would have probably gone home, except I had ridden with somebody else, so I had to stick here for the tour. So it was a place that when they closed, they literally told everybody to go home. So if you'd walk in an office, you'd see work papers on a desk, perhaps a cup of coffee or a can of pop, and a pencil where they left it. If you were out in the mill, you'd see wool and carding machines, half-woven blankets and looms, everything sort of just as it was 2 years prior. So and due to the flood, there had been electrical problems, so there was no plumbing, no heat, limited electrical, and it was not a very compelling picture for those first few minutes. And I remember going home that night and telling my wife that while there was a lot of it was dirty and smelly, and you wouldn't really know where to put your first shovel in to try and clean it up, there was something very special here, that if you could look beyond the mess, there was a special story and something that merited continuing to look at it. Well, the history of this company is really is everything. I would say that when we bought the business, the most important asset we purchased was the name Faribault Woolen Mill Company. It was a name that people know, people recognize for quality, for a long-standing business. In fact, when I started looking at it, I would just ask friends and acquaintances, have you ever heard of Faribault Woolen Mill Company? I just wanted to find out what people knew. And it wasn't 7 or 8 out of 10, it was 10 out of 10. Everybody knew the name Faribault Woolen Mill, and the history here, when you think of Carl Clemmer starting a business in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. Lincoln was president, and he starts with a one-horse treadmill-powered carding machine that he carded wool for batting from local farmers for quilts. It's such a interesting story, just thinking of the time of that, and then so end of the Civil War, through world wars, through the Great Depression, through many economic cycles, that the Clemmers and the Johnsons and the employees that passed through here really made this what it is. We're stewards of that past. We're not, we're a footnote to that, but it's very humbling to be part of a company with such rich history that's given us a tremendous advantage.
This company was founded by the Clemmers, and They lived in this area, and it was passed down for generations, and the Johnsons were in it, and they were passed down for generations. My name is Mary Boudreau. I've been working here at the Faribault Woolen Mill for 60 years. I've been in the weave shop all the time. Right now, I'm just here working and trying to train people and whatever needs to be done. Things have changed in the years I have been here. Mainly machinery and adding on to the building, making more room and more machines and faster. And different blankets, different patterns we're making, and it all changes, something new designs. The day they contacted me that we were going to reopen, I was home in the yard, and pretty soon here comes Avinash, walking up the street, and he comes over to my house. Mary, we're going to open up. We want you to come back. When I came back to work, the place had all been cleaned up. It had been repainted and all new lights. And it was just beautiful in here. Didn't even look like the old place because it was so clean. And just glad to see it go again.
Our first day, July 5th of 2011, we had 5 employees. There were just 5 of us here. And by the end of that year, we had about 40 employees, and I'd say 30 of those were former employees, ranging from 10 to 50 plus years. And those folks, we're here because of them. And so it was, you could really feel the emotion. I remember very early on, because we hadn't seen a machine turn on here. So one of the things when we bought it, we didn't even know if anything actually worked. And we certainly didn't know how to make it work. But as things would turn on, if we were up in this side of the building, we'd get a phone call on our cell phone that said, hey, a carding machine has turned on. The spinning frames are on, a loom is running. And you go back down, and this place that was quiet, dark, cold, all of a sudden was coming back to life. And you could really feel it come back to life.
And so to see the mill come back to life after it was closed for a couple of years is not only a sense of pride, but it's almost a sense of obligation to continue it on its journey. I'm Terry Mockentune. I'm the CEO here at Faribault Woolen Mill. I think a lot of what we talk about here at the mill is that this has been on a journey for over 150 years. That there is no final destination for a company that has been passed from generation to generation and from different workforce to different workforce. To a community, they have participated in that journey for over 150 years.
This mill is one of the last fully integrated mills in the United States, meaning we start with a bale of wool. So we start with the fiber. In the old days, they would buy wool from they may have bought it directly from ranchers or farmers, and they would clean it here. There's a scouring line in the lower level, and in those days they would clean it from right off the sheep. Now we purchase our wool from brokers.
I think a lot of attractiveness to our product isn't just that it's a really nice product at the end of the day that goes over a couch or a bed, but it's the fact that it has a tie back to an agricultural component, that we actually do the 100% of the process here.
And everything every process is applied under the roof of this building, so there's nothing outsourced. So we start with the raw fiber. It's dyed. If it needs to be dyed, it will be dyed. It will be then carded and turned into yarn, and then woven. And then we'll go through a wet processing process. Drying, napped, cut, sewn, finished, and packaged and labeled, and so literally the whole thing happens right here. So this is a unique place in that everything happens here. There's 22 processes that are applied.
A lot of the equipment here at the mill, while it might be old, is also how it's still done. A lot of the other woolen mills, like a Pendleton or a Woolridge, use similar equipment as ours. The skilled workforce today that runs a lot of these are guys and gals that either grew up on farms or like being around the auto industry. They're people that are very good with their hands. They like to mechanically think about how things can be taken apart and put back together, a real kind of mechanical engineering background. So, you know, the challenge for us and the goal for us is to continue to find those trades, those skill sets that are available in the broader community. But a lot of what we do out there is just taking people who have a real inquisitive nature. I don't think there's anything that we're doing out there today that can't be learned, that can't be trained. It's more about the individuals having a real desire to come back to something that's very traditional, has a long history with it, and then transform it.
You know, it's really a great feeling to work here, and now that we celebrated our 150th year, we're a big asset to the community with the people we employ, and our product is sold all over. We have a great variety of stuff going all over. Nice new patterns, and it's really good. So it's just kind of special to see something out in the market that you help make. A lot of people have had blankets for a long, long time, and I know I have one at home that my mother and dad got for their 50th wedding anniversary, and I forgot what year that was, but I was still in high school at that time, so, but I still have it, and it's just like new yet.
Some of the stories that I resonate the most with here are stories that relates to people getting their issued World War I or II green standard issue blanket and carrying those with them into the European theater or even the Pacific theater on that war front. And for me, that really brings alive what we do here when you can look back at pictures and stories and think about how this business has had a relationship with our United States Armed Forces for all these years, and has really played a role in this, you know, the successful proliferation of democracy, I guess if you want to say that, and freedom throughout this world. And I think that is what we need to continue to breathe into our product here as we expand and grow as a company.
We had a great benefit of the story and the history and the desire for American-made goods again to bring textiles here. So we've been very blessed with great names wanting to work with us, and you know, it's humbling, and every day we're just thankful for what we have, and we've got to. It's still a lot of work to do, but we've got what a lot of people would love to have.
It's great to see raw fiber turn into a beautiful blanket. Coming up next, Kent Theisse explains how sequestration may affect government programs.
Thanks, Dan. Sequestration is the reduction of annual spending for most federal programs, including USDA farm programs. Sequestration was part of the 2011 legislation passed by Congress and is intended to reduce the federal budget deficit. The Federal Office of Management and Budget is responsible for determining when and how sequestration is administered. Provisions in the 2014 Farm Bill allow for farm program payments to be reduced by sequestration. Conservation Reserve Programs, CRP payments, and federal crop insurance payments are exempt from sequestration provisions. Many farm operators in the upper Midwest will be receiving a significant county-based ag risk coverage payment this fall. This is part of the farm program that they signed up for. These payments are for the 2014 crop year and are being paid in October of 2015. Most likely, these payments will be subject to the sequestration cutbacks. The estimated Ark County payments for 2014 for most farmers in southern Minnesota and northern Iowa will be $70 to $80 per corn base acre, with slightly less payments than that in other areas of Minnesota. Most experts anticipate a sequestration reduction of around 7.2 to 7.3% of the expected payments. For a farm operator that would be receiving $50,000 in total payments, that's a reduction of $3,600, and consequently, if they were receiving $100,000, it'd be $7,200 in reduction of payments. The only way that these reductions could be avoided would take action by Congress, and it's unlikely at this point that Congress will take any action. Farmers and others that deal with farm programs should take note that most of the calculators for farm program payments developed by universities did not include any sequestration reductions. For further information on sequestration, farm operators and others need to contact their local Farm Service Agency office. When major pieces of legislation, such as the 2014 Farm Bill, are passed by Congress and signed into law, it's important to remember that there are two key parts for any legislation. One part is the original legislation that sets up the parameters for federal programs such as farm program payments. The other is authorizing the federal funding for these programs, which is typically done by Congress on an annual basis. We need to be aware that federal funding for most programs is not guaranteed until this funding is allocated by Congress. I'm Kent Theisse, and we'll see you next time.
I'm with Amber Hanson, the Associate Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Farm Bureau. Welcome to Farm Connections.
Thank you.
Well, tell us about your job.
So I have the pleasure of serving nearly 30,000 Minnesota Farm Bureau members and represent them on the federal level, policy and regulations and the grassroots effort that Farm Bureau really is all about. So I get to work on the policies that they set here in Minnesota and make sure that those policies are being communicated to our members of Congress out in DC. So I have the opportunity to represent the farmers while they're back in the fields doing what they do every day.
Well, that's a privilege and an honor, I would think.
It's great because everything that we're doing out in DC has a huge impact on the farms back here in Minnesota. And so that by being able to be their voice out there, it's being able to help them farm and continue to farm day after day.
Washington, D.C. is quite a ways away, probably how many hundreds of miles?
It's an hour and a half plane ride, so it's a ways.
So how can public policy in D.C. affect a Minnesota farmer?
So everything that you do on your farm every single day is connected to some sort of public policy, whether it's the permit you need to get to be able to have your livestock operation or the policies that help you buy crop insurance for your crop farm. It's all connected. So if you're not watching what they're doing out in DC, they might pass some bills or insert some regulations that will prevent you from being able to farm, which is a really scary thought, but it's possible.
Well, I'm hoping from listening to you, Amber, that some of our representatives and senators actually reach out to you as a farm expert and your organization. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, we have such a great relationship with our members of Congress because they know what agriculture means to Minnesota. So they want to make sure that they're knowing what our members are thinking as well. So we've been able to develop a great relationship with all 10 members of Congress, our 8 representatives and 2 senators, because agriculture is the backbone of Minnesota and they tend to realize that. So we've been able to have really great conversations. Even if we don't agree in the end, they at least know where the farmers and ranchers and livestock owners and everybody is back here in Minnesota.
Well, what are some of the important policies that you're working on?
Farm Bureau is the general farm organization, so we cover it all. Right now, the biggest thing Farm Bureau is known for is our fight back against the EPA on waters of the U.S. So the EPA is trying to extend their authority under the Clean Water Act, which is a huge implication for farmers and ranchers and the permitting process they have to go to do normal activities on their private lands. So that's been probably the #1 thing. But we've also been a big voice in the GMO labeling debate that's just moving through Congress now, and immigration and transportation and appropriation. So we're watching it all to make sure our farmers are doing okay.
Well, thanks for doing that. That's an important job.
We try.
So you spend some time in D.C. as well as Minnesota, correct?
Yep.
So what are the differences between working, well, I know your home is rural Grand Meadow in Mower County, Minnesota, and the southern border. What are some differences working in a large urban area like D.C. compared to Grand Meadow?
It's such a big culture shock. back home in southern Minnesota especially, it's friendly. We got that Minnesota nice thing. That's definitely a true statement, especially once you get out of Minnesota and you really have each other's back and you can have conversations and really understand the other person's point of view. In DC, everybody's out there for themselves. You have to have those conversations sometimes with people with bigger egos than your own and make sure that they understand that the Beltway and DC is very far away from Minnesota sometimes, and that the things that they're doing every day actually has effects on the boots on the ground here in Minnesota. So just the cultural differences on what people are focused on their day-to-day and kind of their priorities in life, I think.
Huge differences, but what a difference you make carrying the conversation to our policymakers.
That bridge needs to be there because our farmers and ranchers are in the field taking care of their livestock, taking care of their crops every day, and they don't have the opportunity to be watching those issues all the time. Our Farm Bureau members are great about responding when big issues come up. We've had hundreds of members respond to this Waters of the U.S. Act, so when they're called to action, they act, but it's not their priority. You shouldn't have to be watching what Congress is doing every day, so we have their back on that.
Well, and if they're watching Congress, they can't tend to their fields and to their livestock
Exactly.
either.
It's a full-time job watching what Congress is trying to do.
Amber, I also know that you're a member of MARL Class 8, Minnesota Ag Rural Leadership. Tell us about that experience.
That's been one of the best experiences I've had. We're just starting year number 2 this fall, and I'm one of 30 people in Class 8. I've had the opportunity to meet people from all across the board. Our class is made up of the Hmong Farmers Association, the Farmers Market Association, people from Minnesota Corn, and everybody. So I've been able to learn a lot from their experiences and my experiences, and we really learn a lot from each other while seeing agriculture all across the state. And in February, we get to travel to Vietnam, so we get to take our experiences to the international level, which I'm so excited about, to see a perspective on agriculture that's going to be so much different than Minnesota.
Wonderful, and I hope you have a wonderful trip and bring back some things for us to learn.
I'll try.
Can you give any advice on ag careers, especially to people maybe that are making choices for post-secondary education or career choices?
Agriculture has so many opportunities, and I grew up on a farm. It's 150 years in my farm family, so agriculture it's in my blood. But I'm not a girl that should ever probably drive a tractor, and I don't tend to get my hands dirty very often, but I wanted to give back to agriculture. So I found a pathway that still let me give back and be involved in agriculture and help my dad every day with doing something that I loved besides. So I think a lot of people have that mentality that you need to go back to the farm, which is great, and it's great to see generations go back, but not everybody wants to go back to the farm. So by staying connected to agriculture in different ways continues to help the industry grow and succeed. So the technology side of things, the development, research, those kinds of things are so critical to agriculture, and by giving back in that way too, you can stay involved in agriculture, which I think is great.
Amber, thanks for joining us on Farm Connections.
Thank you so much.
Stay tuned for more Farm Connections.
Exploring career opportunities in agriculture. Ag 101. Funding for Ag 101 provided by the Ag Star Fund for Rural America.
Today I'm here with Haley Hinrichs, senior at Goodhue High School, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience in agriculture. How are you doing today, Haley?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
Great, thank you. So tell me a little bit about your interest in agriculture.
Well, I've grown up on a dairy farm my entire life. I live on a small farm outside of Goodhue, Minnesota, where we have about 90 cows that we milk. And I joined 4-H as a young girl, and when I got to high school, I decided to join FFA, and I was able to take a whole variety of ag classes, and just my experiences of living on a farm and being involved in FFA as well as taking different ag classes really sparked my interest in agriculture, and that is where I found my passion for agriculture as well.
Well, that sounds really exciting. Do you have a specific interest in agriculture, animals, plants, natural resources, environment?
I definitely have an interest in the animal aspect of agriculture. I took a biotechnology class last year, my junior year of high school, and that really gave me an opportunity to explore some of the genetics side of agriculture and with animals, and even working with GMOs for the plants as well. And that really sparked my interest in the technology aspect of agriculture.
Wow, that really opens a lot of doors for a lot of different careers that you could become involved in. Some things that come to my mind, possibly that you might be interested in, would be an advocate for technology and agriculture, which always seems to be kind of a touchy subject at some times. Yeah. So if you're really good at public speaking, that's a really good career to consider. Looking ahead to graduation, have you decided where you're going to school?
I have decided where I am going to school. I'm planning on attending Iowa State University, which is in Ames, Iowa. And as of this fall, I will be majoring in agriculture exploration. And this is a major where it's for people who aren't entirely sure what they want to do someday, but they know they would like to have a career in the agriculture industry. And this major really gives me a chance to explore different options that I have as far as choosing a major and choosing a career that I know that I'll like. And I'm like a lot of high school students out there. I don't know entirely what I want to do someday, but just from my agriculture background and my impact that FFA has made on me, I do know that agriculture is where I want to be someday, which is why I'm still looking to explore my options.
I really look forward to seeing how you develop in the field of agriculture in the next few years and looking at what you have to offer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haley.
It's been another great show as we've traveled the region to discover the many facets of agriculture. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman. See you next time on Farm Connections.
You can access more information about KSMQ on Facebook and at ksmq.org.